23, but I'm going to start actually with verse 18. Prior to this, Jesus has fed, I believe, the 4,000. Or he sends out the 12, he feeds the 5,000, but he comes along and you start to realize and understand that there's some things that are going on behind the scenes. We're starting to understand that the Bible itself becomes important, and who is this Christ becomes even more important, because I think sometimes we tend to view Christ as being somebody as expressively wonderful, but there comes that point where there still needs to be the question asked, and that is the same question that Jesus asked Peter, and that is, who do you say that I am? So hear then God's word for us this morning from Luke chapter 9, verses 18 to 27. Once again, when Jesus was praying in private and his disciples were with him, he asked them, who do the crowds say that I am? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others that one of the prophets of long ago has come back to life. But what about you, he asked, who do you say I am? Peter answered, the Christ of God. Jesus strictly warned them not to tell this to anyone. And he said, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law. And he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Then he said to them all, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me will save it. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit his very self? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his glory and in the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. I tell you the truth, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God. This ends the reading of God's holy word for us this morning. I mentioned to the kids this morning when we were meeting up front here, I said, they talked about football and all this other stuff and about enjoying sports. But it's more than just sports, because another question I have with it that goes with it is, have you ever been in a relationship? How many of you have been in a relationship? Raise your hands. A few of you are willing to admit it. Most of you are. Sometimes when we're in a relationship, there comes that dreaded talk. And I'm asking the question, I wonder where this relationship is heading. It's that moment when one or the other looks at and asks each other, where's this relationship going? Kyle Idleman, in his book, Not a Fan, of which the series comes out of, calls this the DTR, or the defining the relationship moment. It's in that moment where one needs to know what is ahead and are we committed to the relationship we are in. I know a number of people who have gone through this talk and at one time or another. Some have been wonderful moments where they found out that yes, this is a great relationship, we're moving in the direction that's going to be wonderful and we'll be together and it's going to be great, and they end up getting married. And then there are other ones where they have this moment where it becomes very difficult and they find out that it's probably best to end a relationship at that point. It really blows our mind when this talk is given on the first date, especially. It's then that we want to run as far away as possible and as fast as possible. I mean, my wife and I, we dated for 5 months before we became engaged. Three weeks after we dated, I asked her to marry me, which she asked me if I was nuts. And 5 months later, I was able to say, she finally said yes. It took me that long to whittle her down. But the thing is, if I would have had that relationship when we first sat down over top of a cup of coffee or whatever it may have been and says, I need to define this relationship right off, I can pretty much bet she would have bolted. If she would have done it to me, I know I would have bolted. Because it's not the proper time. You're in that first date things. But you see, this happens in all of life, whether it's in business or in relationships, because in business you want to know how far is the business going to go and what are the next steps that need to be taken. In the relationships with friends as well as those we date and marry, we want to know where is this going. But what about our relationship with Jesus? Over the next number of weeks, I'm going to examine our relationship with Him. And I know that some of this may seem like first date kind of thing for some of you, but I want you to hang in there. And hopefully you'll learn about this Jesus that we're exploring. For most of us in this room, we need to have that DTR talk with Jesus. We need to define our relationship with Him and find out where we stand. As we look at the Christ's invitation, we're going to be using this verse most of the time. And that's that one that says, you have to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Jesus had just been identified by Peter as being the Son of God. So Jesus lays out what's going to happen. He lays out that I'm going to die and all this other stuff's going to happen. And then he follows up with this verse, and that is, if you want to follow me, you have to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Jesus is throwing the hammer down, so to speak, on the relationship. And for many of us, we kind of welcome that, define the relationship moment. Because we're ready to move to a different level of commitment. We're ready to move past the casual and convenient into something more devoted, more committed. Some of you are not ready because you like the setup you have with Jesus. He's a nice guy, you like church, he gives you something to do on Sunday. And you can drink coffee after the service with your friends and visit with them for a little while. You like what you have going on. This idea of commitment and taking it to a different level, you're not so sure about. You get a bit anxious, and possibly you start to have that fight or flight mode kick in. But we need to define our relationships. Where do you stand with Jesus? So I ask you a question this morning. Are you a fan or a follower of Jesus? Some of you are already jumping to the answer that we're all supposed to be followers. At least we should be. But let's not jump too far ahead of ourselves in this. The word fan is oftentimes defined as an enthusiastic admirer. Now, we're all fans of different things, correct? We watch sports teams. We root for different sports teams. I love to root for my Denver Broncos and whoever's playing Oakland. I love to root for my Iowa State Hawkeyes as well as the Michigan State Spartans. And usually try to boo against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Sorry, Echo. The thing is we wear the colors of the teams we like best. We'll wear them proudly. And we stand and we cheer and we love it when we see them win. And we understand the concept of being a fan in sports. Yet I believe that there are many in our churches that are becoming stadiums full of fans of Jesus. But you see, the sad part is that Jesus never cared about fans. If you use the definition that we just gave it just a minute ago, an enthusiastic admirer, then we see that fans are not important to him. I think we come together once a week and we are fans of Jesus. We sit in our seats, we open our bulletins to see what's going to happen next. We clap at certain times, and we leave thinking it was all done for us. We get in our cars, we evaluate the sermon, we give a thumbs up or a thumbs down for the way the service went today, and then we come back again next week and do it all over again. I understand that some are really big fans, and I mean, you're all into this. You know all the songs, you know what page of scripture's on, you're pretty good at doing what we call the sword drills. You can find that passage faster than the guy or lady down the pew from you. Being a fan of Jesus makes us feel pretty good. We can feel pretty good about ourselves because we are great admirers of Christ, yet he never cared about having fans. So if we're honest with ourselves, if we will search our hearts to begin to define the relationship with Jesus, there are three questions that we have to answer. The first is, why are you here? If you read through the Gospels, Jesus at different times puts down a line in the sand, so to speak, that would separate the fans from the followers. One such instance took place in John chapter 6. And Jesus is at the height of his ministry, and we read that large crowds are following him. He was popular. He was doing miracles. He was providing food for the crowds by using 5 loaves and 2 fish. A lot of people were coming because they liked what Jesus was doing for them. In verse 2, we find out why they were coming. They were coming for the show and not the teaching that was life-changing. So why are you here? What is your because? I'm here because, is it for the coffee fellowship after the service? Is it for the comfortable seating? Is it for the chit-chat or for your kids to find friends that are more to your liking than the ones at school? I mean, all of these things are great, but there comes a point in defining a relationship with Jesus. Why are you here? As you get to the end of the passage in John chapter 6, Jesus is laying down the line of what needs to take place. You have a chance, we're going to look at this passage a little later on, but have a chance to take a read through that passage, because it is an amazing passage. Because he lays it on the line, and because he lays it on the line, this is what happens in verse 66. It says, from this time many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. The line had been drawn. Jesus had laid it on the line, and they go, ooh, can't do that. They went home because Jesus said, let's define the relationship we have here. He showed them what he had to offer, and they didn't like it. So this morning, are you here for the show or for what Jesus can do for you? If so, Jesus wants there to be a defining moment. Why are you here? For Jesus, it's because he wants to have a deep relationship with you. There we go. For Jesus, he wants you that relationship. I want to take a look at it. If we look at life as being a sporting event. Truth is that many times we like to sit in the stands and watch the action going on. We like to coach from our seats as to what is supposed to happen. We think we know better than the coach on what plays would be best. That's being a fan. The follower, he wants to or she wants to be out on the field or the court getting ready to play in the game. They're the ones that are willing to go to the practices, to go through the drills, to make them the best that they can possibly be. The follower is willing to listen to the coach and not try to be the coach. The follower is willing to listen to what the coach has to say and then execute the plays. If we are a fan of Christ, it's easy to sit in our seats and criticize the pastor or those who are out there doing things that impact the world with the love of Jesus. Those that are willing to step onto the field knowing that God has called them to step up and to step in. I remember my son when he was going through and playing basketball and the drills, the ladder drills that he had to do, and all the other different things when he was in high school. In fact, one of the schools he was in was a huge high school. And he was probably in his best shape ever as an athlete. But I remember him one time saying, he says, what really bugs him, he says, is we're doing these drills and running these plays, and he says, what bugs him was the ones that would do it half-heartedly because they didn't think they needed to do it. And those are the ones that really grinded him. And the funny part was when it came time for game time, it showed. Those were the ones that did a half-hearted job, oftentimes ended up getting benched. So God is calling us to step up and to step in. And that brings us to that second question, and that is, are you all in? You see, being a follower of Christ requires complete commitment. A follower will do whatever it takes to follow Jesus. They are absolutely loyal, completely committed. Yet if we're truthful, we don't do this very well. I think we like to have selective commitment. We want to customize our Christianity, customize our commitment. We want oftentimes to look at our relationship and say, I'm going to follow Jesus, but I'm going to pick and choose the areas that I'll follow him in. We say things like, well, I'll follow Jesus, but don't ask me to let go of my bitterness, because you see, I deserve that bitterness. Or, I'll follow Jesus, but don't talk to me about my money. It's my money. I worked hard for that money. Or, I'll follow Jesus, but don't ask me to abstain from the desires of things that I have around me. So it's this customized Christianity that says, well, I'll follow Jesus, but only in the areas where I'm comfortable and only in the areas that I agree with. I'm a Christian, but I'm not all in. If this is how you feel, you're not a follower, you're really a fan. There's not an option for selective commitment. There's no bargaining, there's no bartering. When you decide to be a follower of Jesus, you have to go in. Go all in. Fans don't like the idea of going all in. They're not wild about making sacrifice, about denying themselves of something that they really desire, that they really crave. Going back to the sports analogy, are you happier being on a team and not doing anything? Maybe you're willing to be on the field if the donuts are available with the Gatorade. That's me. Or if I don't have to break a sweat. But you see, in the game, you can't do your own thing as much as we would like to. We can't say that we will not get dirty or have to face any tough opposition. I know that if I were on a team, especially a football team, with people that didn't want to get dirty, didn't want to face the opposition, I know for a fact I would not be happy playing with them. Especially if they expected me to do it all. And they could reap the benefits without getting in the game. I don't think that's what Christ wanted either. If we want to wear the uniform but not be prepared to play the game and don't want to do the hard part of what needs to be done, then we are really only a fan and we're really not a follower. So if you've answered the question, where or why are you here, then it's pretty easy to figure out if you're all in or not. If you're not here for the right reasons, then you won't be willing to go all in. And that brings us to a third question, and that question is, have you made it your own? You see, most of us have started coming to church, and this includes me. We come because of our parents, or we come because of our spouses a lot of times. We come to appease someone. I know when I was a kid, that was one thing I did. I went to church because it was expected of me, and I was told I would go. My mom and dad made sure we were at church all the time. When I got to a point where I could start choosing my own things, I chose not to go for a while. But what was funny was my father had a unique way of making you feel guilty. And so I would go back again. When we do this, we can become a fan rather easily. It's like riding in a car, listening to music, a genre of music that we're really not that hepped up on. But eventually we listen to it and pretty soon, you ever start to hum the tunes? Start to sing songs? You become kind of a fan of that genre of music at that point. When I was working with some Hispanic, they loved to listen to the Mexican radio station, so I got to listen to a lot of Mexican music, Hispanic music. And yeah, I got to be kind of a fan of it again. You know, I really didn't care for it all that much. But you see, that can happen in the church as well. We come to appease someone, and pretty soon we're in the flow of what is happening. We know the songs, we recognize the stories of the Bible, we are kind of fans of Jesus, but in truth, that can be kind of a dangerous place to be. If your faith is not your own, if you are not pursuing a relationship with Christ, and you keep coming week after week to create a faith that is someone else's, you are just numbing yourself to the real thing. You'll become numb to real faith. You'll become comfortable with the songs and a few verses, none of which really require sacrifice or personal change. God tells us we have to make our faith our own. Jesus isn't looking for a relationship between you and your mom and dad or spouse and him. He's looking for a relationship with you. That's probably why Jesus said in Luke chapter 14:26, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. This isn't about your mom, dad, or your spouse. It's about you and Jesus. It's about a relationship he wants to have with you personally. And he wants you to know that he loves you, he cares for you, he was willing to die for you. And he wants wants you to turn your life over to Him. So over the next couple of weeks, I want you to do some soul searching, some heart examinations. And I want you to ask yourself the question, am I a follower or am I just a fan? Are we only sitting in the cheap seats watching the game go by? Or are we getting down in the field, getting into the game, standing firm and standing strong in the power of God against the oppositions that are around us, to show the love of Jesus Christ to a world that's broken, a world that's lost, a world that's hurting, letting them know that He is Lord of my life, that He loves them and desires them to come to Him as well. Let's bow our heads in a moment of prayer. Father, this morning, many times we're more fans than we are followers. You've called us to get into the game, and it's so much easier to let somebody else do it. It's so much easier to do our own thing and not worry about it. It's so much easier to stand and do the rah-rah, but to get down and dirty, Lord, that's hard. Help us, Father, to turn our lives to You, to be committed to the call of Your kingdom, to be in a relationship with You, because, Lord God, we know how much You've loved us. Lord, You stretched out Your arms and said, I love You this much, and then You died. What else can we do than to commit ourselves completely and wholly to You? Lord God, empower us, empower this church to reach into this world with the love of Jesus. Help it to continue to be a church where, in a place where people are loved and accepted for who they are, not for what they have. A place where people can come and know that no matter what their history may have been, they're still loved and cared for. A place also, Lord God, where the transformation can take place in their lives as well as they come to accept You, their own Savior. And see that domino effect start to happen, where we start touching lives and more lives and more lives. Because, Lord, we're willing to be in the game, getting down and dirty. And letting people know that no matter how filthy they may have been, You're there to clean them up. Lord, encourage our hearts today. Empower us with Your grace. And help us to turn our lives to You. For I pray this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen. Turn our books to hymn number 4.